From Liberace doing the can-can to Stone Cold and The Rock, the Mega Powers imploding to the end of the streak, Hogan slamming Andre to Rhodes defeating Reigns, there is nothing quite like WrestleMania. For 4 decades, the annual Super Show has provided fans with the very best and very worst of what sports entertainment has to offer. To celebrate the event's 40th anniversary, just believe us, I don't want to get into that argument right now, we are taking a look at every single iteration of the Showcase of the Immortals and bringing you fascinating facts from each event that have only happened once. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is one unique thing about every single WrestleMania. Join us. WrestleMania 1. The very first WrestleMania. Never has something so important been so bloody boring. This initial extravaganza was make or break for WWE, as has been stated multiple times by multiple sources. They loaded the card with all sorts of attractions, but they missed out something that would be integral to any major wrestling show today. Mania 1 featured 3 championship matches, Greg the Hammer Valentine retaining his Intercontinental title over the Junkyard Dog, the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov dethroning tag champs the US Express, and Wendy Richter beating Leilani Kai for the Women's Championship. The one belt not defended on the show was Hulk Hogan's world title. He was too busy teaming with Mr. T in the main event. That makes this Mania the only one in history without a World Championship match, a fact that you feel isn't likely going to change anytime soon. WrestleMania 2. Everybody knows that WrestleMania 2 is the only one to have been hosted from 3 different places. Or is it? Actually, the 2 pre-taped matches for WrestleMania 36 were filmed in separate locations, which, when combined with the Performance Center that hosted the other contests, adds up to 3. We could say that Mania 2 was the only live WrestleMania to emanate from multiple venues, but we decided to go for another less tenuous fact instead. Before the advent of 2-day Manias, WWE's biggest night of the year was traditionally held on a Sunday. Even now, the shows still take place on the weekend. Not this one, though. For some unknown reason, 2 is the only Mania to have happened on a Monday. Monday, April 7th, 1986 to be precise. So why did this happen? Who the hell cares? It was a largely terrible show and I don't want to talk about it anymore. WrestleMania 3. You could argue that WrestleMania 3 is where the legendary show truly got going, thanks in large part to its blockbuster main events. WWE Champion Hulk Hogan, challenger Andre the Giant, the very fate of the world hanging in the balance. Alright, I may have over-exaggerated slightly, but it was still a really big deal, okay? The Hulkster slamming the 8th wonder of the world to the mat helped make WWE what it is today, even if this wasn't the first time it had happened, despite what commentary told you. WrestleMania 3 is the only time Andre ever got pinned on pay-per-view, however. In fact, with the exception of a match against the Ultimate Warrior, which was broadcast on MSG TV, it's the only time the big man was ever shown being pinned on camera. Considering how long the Giant was in WWE for and how many times he wrestled on TV, that's not bad going. WrestleMania 4. I'm willing to bet that just about every bonebender who dons the tights dreams of one day being in the main event of WrestleMania. The advertising for the yearly spectacle often heavily features the names in the final match on the card, which is what makes WrestleMania 4 so interesting. The gimmick of this show was a night-long tournament for the World Championship, which was vacated after that awesome angle with Hogan, Andre, and Ted DiBiase. 14 men would enter, 1 would leave with the gold, and then the rest of them would also leave, just not with the gold. As a result, Mania 4 is the only one with a completely unadvertised main event. Some Manias would have some mystery participants, see numbers 10 and 30, and whilst the endings to 9 and 31 were different from what was promised, fans were at least promised something ahead of time. The actual main event turned out to be Macho Man Randy Savage versus the $1 Million Man, with the Macho Man winning his first WWE Championship. WrestleMania 5. The granddaddy of them all has returned to the same location multiple times during its long history. Madison Square Garden has played host 3 times, whilst 2-time venues include New Jersey's MetLife Stadium, Texas's AT&T Stadium, and New Orleans' Superdome. Sorry about that, brother! That said, the Superdome will join the 3 times club in 2026. There's also the curious case of Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. Advertised as Trump Plaza as a favor to Vince's presidential pal, the arena housed WrestleManias 4 and 5, making the latter the only one to have taken place in the same venue as the year before. According to Bruce Pritchard, this happened because Trump made the company a good offer to host the event again. Although, since this is a story involving both Brucey P and the Donald, take it with a lethal dose of salt. WrestleMania 6. In total, 8 different championships have been defended in WrestleMania main events. 5 of those are various men's and women's world championships, whilst the closer of Night 1 of Mania 39 was technically for both the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. That leaves just one belt, the coveted Intercontinental Championship. Since its inception in 1979, the Workhorse belt has been contested in 5 pay-per-view main events, including the final match at Mania 6, a winner-takes-all contest between IC champ The Ultimate Warrior and world champ Hulk Hogan. To date, this remains the only time the company's second oldest active championship has featured in a Mania main event. Shockingly, it's also the only time in his career that the Hulkster ever challenged for the IC belt on TV. Actually, that's not that shocking, is it? Hogan probably didn't even know that belt existed until he saw it in person. WrestleMania 7. Axe and Smash, also known as Demolition, or We Have the Road Warriors at Home, have a stellar record at WrestleMania. They are the only team in history to leave 3 straight Manias with titles, winning matches for the World Tag Team Championships at numbers 4, 5, and 6. Then we come to WrestleMania 7. This time, our favourite Gimps went up against Genichiro Tenryu and Koji Katao, 2 wrestlers on loan from Japanese promotion Super World of Sports. The imports got the win, marking this as the only Mania to feature a demolition loss. That's not all though. As Axe was absent from this match, replaced by Crush, he maintains a perfect 3-0 record at Mania, one of the best undefeated streaks in the event's history. Now, I'm not saying a 77-year-old Axe should become the new Undertaker, but okay, that's exactly what I'm saying. WrestleMania 8. The main event of WrestleMania is supposed to be the biggest match of the year and therefore should always have a definitive finish. Unless you've got to protect Hulk Hogan, of course. The final match of WrestleMania 8 saw Mr. Nanny go up against another jacked-up blonde lunatic in Sid Justice. The bout, which bumped Randy Savage and Ric Flair's world title outing down the card, was a boring slog until Sid's manager Harvey Whippleman attacked the Hulkster for the DQ. This spot was supposed to go to Papa Shango, but he was too busy planning his future career as a pimp and missed his cue. As it stands, this is the only Mania main event to end via disqualification. All of the others have culminated via either pinfall or submission, giving these 2 the dubious honor of participating in the screwiest Mania finish of all time. Hey, ain't no way Hogan was losing clean, Jack. WrestleMania 9. A few championships have changed hands multiple times at WrestleMania. Damian Priest's Money in the Bank cash-in on Drew McIntyre came mere minutes after he had beaten Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship, whilst the Hardcore Championship was passed around like an unwanted Pokemon card at Mania 16 and 18. When it comes to the WWE Championship, however, this phenomenon has only occurred once. At Mania 9, Yokozuna defeated Bret Hart to win the top title in a match that can be best described as a match. Just when all hope was lost, who should come to America's rescue but Mr. Red, White, and Boo, Hulk Hogan. After pretending to be friends with the Hitman, Hogan leapt in the ring to accept an impromptu title match, and 22 seconds later, the belt had a new home. Bastard. WrestleMania 10. Whilst the WrestleMania 8 main event was the only one to end via DQ, it crucially wasn't for a world title. Every match for the big belt has ended conclusively, except this one. Obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be on this list, would it? Mania 10 featured 2 matches for the World Championship. The second one, Bret Hart vs. Yokozuna, concluded with the excellence of execution, pinning the big man to win the gold. Earlier in the night, however, Yoko defended his title against Lex Luger. Remember the 1994 Royal Rumble? The double hug over the top rope? That whole thing. This match was refereed by Mr. Perfect. He got into a shouting match with Luger, resulting in the total package giving him a shove. Perfect called for the bell, making this the only world title match in Mania history to end via DQ. Poor Lex. All those gorgeous muscles and nothing to show for it. Well, except for the muscles, I suppose. WrestleMania 11. The main event of WrestleMania 11 will go down as one of the strangest in company history. In a pretty desperate attempt to garner some of that sweet mainstream attention, WWE booked Bam Bam Bigelow to go one-on-one with two-time Super Bowl champion and real-life dodgy man Lawrence Taylor. This was LT's only professional match, and whilst Bigelow was a legend in the business, his greatest successes came outside of a WWE ring. All of this means that for the only time in history, WrestleMania was main evented by two men who never held a championship in WWE. The closest Bam Bam ever got was the final of a tag title tournament in which he and his partner Tatanka lost to the legendary combination of Bob Holly and the 1-2-3 Kid. Although neither of them main evented Mania against a disgraced football player, so who's the real winner? WrestleMania 12. This was one of the easiest entries on this entire list because WrestleMania 12 played host to an experiment that even WWE haven't been crazy enough to try again. The show ended with a match between Shawn Michaels and WWE champion Bret Hart. This wasn't just any match though, it was the first televised 60-minute Iron Man match in the promotion's history. There have been 17 Iron Man matches since this one, and none of them have been at Mania. WWE quickly realised that fans didn't want to sit through an hour-long match at the biggest show of the year, especially if it was going to be as dry as the one between HBK and the Hitman. At 61 minutes and 56 seconds, this is by far and away the longest match in Mania history. Even Triple H, at his most self-absorbed, hasn't come close. WrestleMania 13. We can't talk about WrestleMania without talking about the one performer synonymous with the event, whose matches have defined the show more than anyone else, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, Tito Santana. Oh, yeah, and The Undertaker. By the time he dropped the curtain on his legendary career, the Dead Man's Mania record stood at 25-2. In that time, he only fought for 3 championships, and only once did he compete for the most prestigious prize in the company. WrestleMania 13 is the only one to feature The Undertaker in a WWE Championship match. Sadly, it was against Psycho Sid and was one of the worst title matches in the event's history. It did feature Sid allegedly cacking his pants, however, which makes it all worth it. Taker's other title matches were against Batista and Edge at Manias 23 and 24 respectively, but those were for the World Heavyweight Championship, not the WWE title. WrestleMania 14. Over 20 different championships have been defended at WrestleMania. I tried to work out exactly how many, but then I ran out of fingers and had to lie down. But what I can tell you is that Mania 14 was the only one to feature a match for this specific title, the criminally undervalued Light Heavyweight Championship. The very blocky belt was defended in the second match on the show. Champion Taka Michinoku retained over Aguilar, the future S.A. Rios, in just under 6 minutes. And that was it, the only major showcase the title would ever get. What a shame. The championship has a long and complicated history, but WWE recognized Michinoku's reign as the first one. It was treated like complete trash for most of its run, evidenced by the fact that the longest reigning champion was Gillberg. WrestleMania 15. Sometimes wrestling bookers like to employ a technique that we in the business call a big fat shooty McShooterson from Shootsville, USA. And yes, the S does stand for shoot. As far as we can tell, there has only been one WrestleMania match to end via a legitimate, i.e. not worked, finish. Some might look at the so-called sumo challenge between Big Show and Akabono at WrestleMania 21, but if you think that was anything other than pre-planned, then I have a timeshare opportunity I'd really love to talk to you about. Anyway, back to Mania 15, and after winning the cursed Brawl for All tournament in 1998, Bart Gunn was given the honor of facing professional boxer Butterbean on the show. To the surprise of absolutely no one, Mr. Bean, no not that one, laid Gunn out in just 35 seconds. Serves him right for making Dr. Death look a wally, eh? WrestleMania 2000. WrestleMania 2000, which took place in the year 2000 as opposed to being the 2000th edition of the show, is notorious amongst wrestling fans for one stunning reason. The only singles match, singles in this case meaning one wrestler versus another wrestler and that's it, was Terry Runnels versus the Cat. Even this wasn't a traditional bout, as it had a catfight stipulation attached to it and featured shenanigans from Mae Young, Fabulous Moolah, and special guest referee Val Venus. With this in mind, Mania 2000 is the only edition of the show of shows to have no men's singles matches on the entire card. It had a triple threat, a triangle ladder, a hardcore battle royal, which didn't resemble a battle royal in any way, shape, or form, several tags, and a four corners elimination bout. But nowhere on this show did two blokes square up for a one-on-one throwdown. Considering that Mania 2000 was rather ropey overall, I'm glad they never went this route again. WrestleMania X7. Here it is, folks, the show widely regarded as the greatest WrestleMania of all time, if not one of the best wrestling shows, period. The reason why X7 is remembered so fondly is because of the insane number of legendary matches it played host to. Triple H vs. The Undertaker, the Hardcore Championship Triple Threat, Shane vs. Vince, Rock vs. Stone Cold Part 2, then there's the small matter of that night's tag title match. Edge and Christian, Matt and Jeff Hardy, and Bubba Ray and Devon Dudley went to war that night in Houston in the second ever Tables, Ladders and Chairs match. Considered by many as the best the stipulation has ever produced, perhaps that's why this Mania is the only one to have featured a TLC match. Given that 5 of the 6 men involved are still wrestling, hey, maybe they can run it back at Mania 47. Please God, no. WrestleMania 18. It is not hyperbole to say that without the star power of Hulk Hogan, the first few WrestleManias would not have succeeded as they did. The Hulkster competed on the first 9 shows, main eventing all but one of them. As people hadn't got sick of the red and yellow by this point, Hogan wrestled all of these matches as a babyface, but that all changed when he returned to the Federation in 2002. The legendary Icon vs. Icon showdown at WrestleMania 18, which pitted Hollywood Hogan against The Rock, is the only time that the Immortal One has wrestled a Mania match as a heel. Sure, the Canadian fans might have cheered him, but when the first bell rang, his character was a villain. He had his final Mania match the following year as a babyface against Vince McMahon before riding off into the sunset as a beloved hero who has never been booed again. WrestleMania 19. Half the appeal of being a pro wrestler is getting to choose an awesome ring name for yourself. Don't like being called Monty Sop? Try Badass Billy Gunn instead. Sick of being made fun of for having the name Michael Hickenbottom? Hey, how about the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels? Sometimes, though, a wrestler's real name is so cool that they don't need to change it. As it stands, the only time 2 performers wrestling under their given names have met in the main event of WrestleMania was at the 19th edition of the show. Brock Lesnar defeated Kurt Angle to win the WWE Championship in a great match that is mostly remembered for the former messing up a shooting star press. Despite sounding like they were ripped straight from the pages of a Marvel comic, Brock Edward Lesnar and Kurt Stephen Angle are indeed their real names. But let's all be thankful they opted against including their middle names. WrestleMania 20. At the time of this video, John Cena has won 10 out of his 16 WrestleMania matches, trouncing the likes of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Bray Wyatt, and The Rock. As Mr. Hustle, Loyalty, and Respect, he has eked out every single one of those victories the good, honest American way, with one notable exception. At WrestleMania 20, Cena won his show-opening United States Championship contest against The Big Show by bopping the Giant in the snoot with brass knuckles. This is the only time in Cena's entire WrestleMania career that he embraced the hate and won a match via cheating. He wasn't actually a heel at the time and was on his way to becoming a very over babyface, with the crowd in Madison Square Garden cheering him on. Will we see a repeat of this moment in Cena's match with Cody at Mania 41? Hide the Rolex, Mr. Rhodes. WrestleMania 21. Back when Vince McMahon was in charge of WWE, the rumor was that he hated tag team wrestling, which is why all of your favorite tag teams always broke up in tragic circumstances. Despite this, most WrestleManias feature at least one tag team match. I said most, I'm sure you can see where this is going. Because Mania 21 is the only one to feature 0 tag team matches anywhere on the card. I'm sure some of you will already be furiously typing, but what about WrestleMania 25, you idiots? Whilst it's true that there are no tag matches on that show's main card, there is one on the pre-show, dickhead. Mania 21's pre-show match, however, was a 30-man inter-brand battle royal. Every other encounter that night was one-on-one, except for the Money in the Bank ladder match. Sorry everyone who was in a tag team in 2005, better luck next year. WrestleMania 22. Given that The Undertaker wrestled 27 times at the Show of Shows, it's interesting that only one of those matches had his signature gimmick stipulation applied to it. Because of the 23 televised casket matches to have taken place in WWE, only one has been at Mania. We have number 22 to thank for that, specifically the match between The Undertaker and Mark Henry. The Phenom and the World's Strongest Man went one-on-one for 9.5 minutes before Taker rolled Henry into the coffin and shut the lid. Given that 99% of people don't remember this chapter of the streak ever happened, you can see why the company never bothered with another casket match at Mania. It's a goofy stipulation that felt pretty outdated even in 2006, and there probably aren't many fans desperate to see it return to the yearly spectacle. Nice that it happened once though, eh? WrestleMania 23. When an injury to Triple H forced him out of his planned WrestleMania 23 main event with John Cena, the company didn't have to look very far to find his replacement. The Cerebral Assassin's old DX buddy Shawn Michaels was placed into a feud with Big Match John instead. HBK and Cena had a fantastic bout to close the show, aided by this interesting storyline wrinkle. 2 months prior to their big clash, Johnny C and Shawnee M captured the World Tag Team Championships from Rated RKO on Raw. This means that, for the first and only time ever, two co-champs faced off in the main event of WrestleMania. This would have been the only tag champ versus tag champ match in Mania history period had Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio not faced off 2 years earlier. Spoil sports. Cena and Michaels lost the straps one night later after the latter, true to form, turned on the former. WrestleMania 24. Plenty has been written about how much WWE dragged the ECW brand through the mud after they resurrected it. They did at least try to promote it, however. Sometimes, maybe. The third brand was represented a few times at WrestleMania, but only once was its top championship defended on the big night. That was at Mania 24, when Chavo Guerrero defended the belt against Kane, who had earned the opportunity on a pre-show battle royal. Oh yes, those two legendary ECW stars, Chavo Guerrero and Kane. To make matters worse, the Big Red Machine popped up behind the champ, gave him a single chokeslam, and then pinned him for the gold in an embarrassingly short 11 seconds. That is the shortest title match in Mania history, by the way. 2 years later, ECW would be shut down forever and its belt retired with almost zero fanfare. At least it got its WrestleMania moment, I guess. WrestleMania 25. There was a time where women's matches at Mania were not a sure thing. And even when they were booked, it wasn't a guarantee that a female star would come out on top. Mania 25 played host to the infamous Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal, where women from WWE's past and present made their collective entrance as a backdrop to a Kid Rock concert and then flung each other out of a ring whilst the commentators struggled to remember their names. Truly, it was a golden age. The match came down to Melina, Beth Phoenix, and a mysterious competitor called Santino Marella. This was, of course, Santino Marella pretending to be his own twin sister, and lo and behold, he won the match. This makes Mania 25 the only one to have a 0% win rate for its female stars. There were 24 women on the show, and none of them won a match. WrestleMania 26. Whilst this show is memorable for being the night Shawn Michaels retired from in-ring competition for good, lol, there were two World Championship matches that took place at WrestleMania 26 too. Royal Rumble winner Edge challenged Chris Jericho for the World Heavyweight title, whilst John Cena beat Batista for the WWE Championship because he was John Cena and that's how things were done. This is where our unique fact comes from. Both of those sets of opponents had been tag team champions with each other. Jericho and Edge had been unified tag champs the year prior, whilst Cena and Batista held the World Tag Team Championships for 1 week in 2008. Don't ask me why, because I legitimately have no idea. This hasn't happened before or since on a show with multiple world title matches. We're pretty sure this wasn't WWE's plan, but it's still a neat coincidence, eh? WrestleMania 27. WrestleMania has been home to some of the greatest title changes of all time. Austin defeating Michaels, Steamboat defeating Savage, Rhodes defeating Reigns, Molly Holly defeating the Hurricane. Were there any title changes like this at Mania 27? No. And why is that? Because there weren't any title changes at all. In fact, there were only 2 championship matches on the main card. World Heavyweight Champion Edge took on Alberto Del Rio in the opener, retaining the big gold belt in his final match for almost a decade. Then there was the main event, which saw The Miz defending the WWE Championship against John Cena. With a little help from The Rock, a concussed A-lister beat Cena to hold on to the gold, as the night ended with exactly the same champions as it had begun with. There is a reason this is considered one of the worst manias of all time, folks. WrestleMania 28. After Dwayne stuck his Hollywood nose into Big Match John's business at Mania 27, something unprecedented happened the following night on Raw. Cena and The Rock agreed to face each other in the main event of the following year's Super Show. For the first and only time in Mania history, the final match had been announced an entire year in advance. In fact, this is the furthest in advance any Mania match has ever been made official. Fans have been able to guess or speculate about what big matches and moments might take place a few months in advance, but WWE haven't actively promoted a marquee matchup in this fashion ever again. This risky strategy really paid off, as Mania 28 is the most bought pay-per-view in WWE history. Goodness, a buy rate that healthy might make you consider doing something twice in a lifetime, eh? WrestleMania 29. WWE like to structure their shows to not have too many long matches in a row. Breaking things up with a shorter offering used to be the job of the women's roster, until somebody realized that women were actually people too. Who knew? The company planned to use an 8-person tag match, Tons of Funk and the Funkadactyls versus the Rhodes Scholars and the Bellas, as the buffer on WrestleMania 29. However, owing to time constraints, it was cancelled, giving us this fascinating bit of history. Mania 29 is the only Mania to have 3 back-to-back 20-plus minute matches. CM Punk vs. The Undertaker, 22 minutes and 8 seconds, Triple H vs. Brock Lesnar, 23 minutes and 58 seconds, and John Cena vs. The Rock, also 23 minutes and 58 seconds. That is enough to numb anyone's backside, especially as 2 of those matches were disappointingly bland. And oh, poor Brodus Clay, he deserved better. Wait, actually, no he didn't. Forget I said that. WrestleMania 30. The 30th edition of WWE's greatest creation is mainly remembered for 2 reasons: Daniel Bryan winning the world title and Brock Lesnar ending The Undertaker's streak. However, for our fact, we're going to take a look at one of the least significant matches on the card, the Vicky Guerrero Invitational. 14 women were invited to step up and try and take the Divas Championship from AJ Lee. They failed, with Mrs. CM Punk making Naomi tap out to retain her belt, but that's not the point. The point is that this is the only Divas title match in WrestleMania history. Considering that the Butterfly belt was around for almost 8 years before it was discontinued in 2016, this is frankly shocking. The European title was only around for 5 years, and that was defended at 5 different Manias. If you want further proof that WWE didn't know how to treat women during this era, look no further. WrestleMania 31. For 9 years, Seth Rollins was the only person to cash in Money in the Bank both at WrestleMania and during the middle of the match. Then Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre came along and spoiled those facts for us. Thanks a lot, guys. Fear not though, as we have uncovered another interesting tidbit about the heist of the century. When Rollins cashed in at WrestleMania 31, he used the briefcase to insert himself into a WWE Championship match between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. He pinned Reigns to leave the show with the belt, but Reigns hadn't been the champion going in. This marks the only time a Money in the Bank winner has pinned someone who wasn't the champion to cash in. Lesnar hadn't technically been beaten to lose his prize, which is partly why this is one of the greatest booking masterstrokes WWE have ever pulled off. WrestleMania 32. Following his history-making moment at WrestleMania 31, Seth Rollins missed WrestleMania 32 after injuring his knee in November 2015. This wasn't the first time a world champion from the previous Mania had missed the following show. Hulk Hogan wasn't on Mania 10, for example, but what's weird about this one is that Seth wasn't alone. In fact, none of the title holders from the end of Mania 31 wrestled a match at 32. The offending parties were Intercontinental Champion Daniel Bryan, United States Champion John Cena, Tag Team Champions Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, Divas Champion Nikki Bella, and our old pal Mr. Rollins. The road to this particular show was paved with broken wrestlers, as Randy Orton, Neville, Luke Harper, and more also missed out. All things considered, WWE put together a decent card. It's just a shame that most of the matches turned out to be a bit crap. WrestleMania 33. Anyone in attendance at WrestleMania 33 will remember it as the night the Hardy Boys returned to WWE for the first time in nearly a decade. Either that or when Mojo Rawley won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I was there and I remember both, but mainly Mojo. Matt and Jeff shockingly captured the Raw Tag Team Championships in a 4-way ladder match. This was historic for a number of reasons, as it marked the first time Jeff had won a match at the Show of Shows. As it stands, it's the only Mania victory for the charismatic Enigma, which is mad considering how many great moments he's been a part of. The Triangle Ladder match at 2000, TLC 2 at X7, Money in the Bank at 23, Jeff always came up with the goods, but that never got him a dub until this night. In contrast, Matt has won 4 Mania bouts, including bagging a victory over his brother at number 25. WrestleMania 34. As the only 2 children of Vince McMahon that we know of, Shane and Stephanie were always destined to be involved in wrestling somehow. Though their in-ring primes, and I use that word very liberally, were during the Attitude Era, both McMahon Sprogs were on the card for WrestleMania 34. Steph teamed up with her husband Triple H to take on Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey, while Shane paired up with Daniel Bryan to battle the combined forces of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. This marked a very special night for the siblings, as Mania 34 is the only pay-per-view to feature both McMahon kids in separate matches. The pair had been booked on a few episodes of the same TV show before, but never on a stage this big. While Shane O'Mac and Dee Bry were successful in their bouts, the McMahon-Helmsley suffered a humiliating defeat. Their match was way better though, if that's any consolation. WrestleMania 35. Of the 40 different WrestleManias there have been so far, 26 of them have had some sort of pre-show or dark match take place before the official event. These aren't usually much to write home about, merely a collection of fun but inconsequential matches designed to warm up the live crowd. Sometimes though, you get pre-shows like the one before Mania 35. This marks the only time in history 2 championships have changed hands on the Mania pre-show. The first was the Cruiserweight Championship, which passed to Tony Nese after he beat Buddy Murphy. 2 matches later, Zack Ryder and Curt Hawkins unseated the Revival for the Raw Tag Straps. Given that the other 2 matches were the men's and women's battle royals, this could be the most substantial pre-show in wrestling history. That said, this particular Mania was about 200 hours long. Maybe they could have just cut it down a little bit. WrestleMania 36. We could have just said WrestleMania 36 was the only one not to have an audience and moved on, but we are better than that here at Cultaholic. Mostly. WWE threw everything at the wall for their only truly COVID-afflicted Mania. Weird cinematic matches? Tick. Splitting the show across 2 nights? Tick. Rob Gronkowski? Tick, tick, and tick. Another thing it tried was giving its developmental brand a chance to shine. The second night of this Mania opened with Charlotte Flair taking on Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship, the only time that an NXT title has been defended on the main roster's top show. Given how much closer the 2 entities have become and that NXT's own Papa H is now running things, it's strange that this hasn't happened again. Oh, and in case you didn't know, Charlotte won, because Charlotte always wins. WrestleMania 37. While Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair weren't the first women to main event of WrestleMania, they did make history for a very different reason. When these 2 stepped into the ring ahead of their SmackDown Women's Championship encounter at Mania 37, they became part of the first and only all-black main event in the show's history. Up to this point, only 3 other African Americans had headlined the show, all of them men, Mr. T, Lawrence Taylor, and The Rock. Yes, 2 of those are non-wrestlers, thanks for noticing. This Mania was a great night for wrestlers of color overall. Big E and Apollo Crews fought over the Intercontinental Championship, both Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns retained their world titles, and in the biggest moment of the entire weekend, Tamina won a tag team turmoil match. Brings a tear to my eye just thinking about it. WrestleMania 38. We've made mention of him a few times, but I'm afraid we can avoid it no longer. It's time to talk about Vince McMahon. As the creator of WrestleMania, the ex-CEO is of course a key part of the show's DNA. He's also wrestled 5 matches across various Mania cards, but it took him until the 38th show to finally score a win. Following Pat McAfee's victory over Austin Theory, a 76-year-old McMahon got in the ring and challenged Pat to a match. The bell rang, and following a lot of help from Theory and a football, Vince pinned Pat in one of the most surreal moments in Mania history. He then took the worst, actually the best, Stone Cold Stunner of all time. I mean, just look at it. Look at that. Fantastic. WrestleMania 39. Dave Meltzer's star rating system isn't for everyone. In fact, there are some people who think it's the work of the devil. For others, it's a fairly interesting metric that can be used to spark discussion and occasionally violence. Only 4 WrestleMania matches have received the coveted 5 stars from Big Daddy Meltz. They are Shawn Michaels vs. Razor Ramon at Mania 10, Bret Hart vs. Steve Austin at Mania 13, and 2 bouts from Mania 39. The first was the match that closed out Night 1, the Usos defending their undisputed tag team championships against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Then came the beefiest beef fest to ever beef, Gunther vs. Sheamus vs. Drew McIntyre for the IC title. This makes this show the only WrestleMania and indeed main roster WWE show to play host to 2 perfectly rated matches, according to Dave Meltzer. And yes, they took place on different nights, but it still counts, damn it. WrestleMania XL. For our final Mania at time of recording, we could have just gone with the fact that Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns are the only people to have main evented both nights of a weekend-long show. But we decided to go for something a little bit more interesting instead, a mind-blowing fact all to do with championship reigns. Everybody remembers that the American Nightmare defeated the Tribal Chief to end his record-setting run with the Universal Championship. Most people will also remember that Sami Zayn beat Gunther to snap his record-setting Intercontinental Championship reign the previous night. So maybe it's easy to forget that in the opening match of Night 2, Drew McIntyre beat Seth Rollins to end his time as World Heavyweight Champion. As he had been the only holder of the new title at the time, this also counts as a record being broken. 3 different record-breaking reigns, all of them ended at a single pay-per-view extravaganza. Only at WrestleMania, baby.